Hi there and welcome to the latest episode of the Valencia Property Podcast. A couple of surprises this month, including an explanation of why there is no mortgage time bomb in Spain despite rising interest rates, the reaction to my comment about living abroad from a British point of view, and how not to work with Valencia Property. We also take a look at the current market in Valencia and tell you a bit more about what's happening with the Stepping Stone rental project. As usual, we start with looking back at what we've produced for content this month, and actually this month what AI helped us to produce as well. We started with an article about choosing your stepping stone rental. Since we announced our Stepping Stone Rentals project, the interest from both owners of properties and tenants has been off the scale. We've already identified or been given a lot of properties to be used for the project, and we already have people wanting to start their 3-month rentals as soon as the 1st of July. You might notice that was a few days ago. We needed to get a move on but didn't quite make it. We've also had a lot of interest from people wanting to buy a property to include in the project. So in this article, we've looked at the process of buying your Stepping Stones Rentals property, and then we looked at how to get it ready for medium-term tenants. This was also useful for those of you already with a property who wanted to join the project. And this week, I'm going away on Thursday to Asturias for a few days, but I've got various meetings this week with people who want to put their properties with us on Stepping Stone Rentals. Anyway, you can see the article in the show notes. The next article was about the rental crisis in Valencia, updated, just like we said on last month's podcast. Anyway, as you've already listened to it, I don't need to talk about it here. What's that you say? You haven't listened to it? Well, go and download it now, because that was our most downloaded episode of all of the podcasts we've done so far. We've got the link to the episode in the show notes, or you could read the update, and that's also in the show notes. The next two articles were actually not really written by us. They were written by AI, but based on what we had previously written. Let's say, the Ultimate AI Guide to Buying Valencia Property Parts 1 and 2 were our next two articles. Now, I've been planning to write a series of articles for a long time entitled The Ultimate Guide to Buying a Property in Valencia, and putting them together into a book. AI did it for me using just our content on the blog as the source material. So there are two blogs taking you through the process of buying, the process of mortgages if you need one, the process of living in Valencia. Obviously, both of the links are in the show notes. Take a look. And finally, this week we finished it off by talking about how a buyer can ruin a purchase. In the article, we talked about choosing a lawyer who slows the process up, asking ridiculous questions of the owner, insisting on things happening in the way that they happen in your own country, and various other things that you should be avoiding doing, shall we say. It was written after having to stop working with 2 sets of clients in the same week. The first time we've ever done this. So check out what we consider to be bad form or even the last straw. We had a last straw. How not to work with Valencia Property? Well, I told our agent to drop the client. But just for a couple of examples, one thing you shouldn't do is phone me to get advice when you're buying a property through another agent and you think you're in danger of getting ripped off. If you think that, you probably are. Unfortunately, I'm too nice, and I spent a couple of hours at the weekend answering someone's incessant and ever-increasing number of questions. But as this was still going on Friday last week after 5 days of this, and I had the lawyer I had recommended saying, "I've had 20 emails so far. I don't think I'll be doing it again very soon." At the same time, we had a client looking to get out of a purchase with extremely, shall we say, spurious reasons. Just tell us you're having second thoughts rather than claiming that the place may have ghosts or worrying about building up to 5 kilometres away from the house. The first part of today's podcast, though, is about bombs. The UK has a ticking time bomb regarding mortgages because as interest rates go up, everyone falls into the trap of only having fixed their mortgage rate for a short time. In general, people in the UK don't have the option to fix a mortgage rate for 20-25 years. Let's go with why there isn't a ticking time bomb in Spain, though. Spain learned from the financial crisis in 2008 and decided not to repeat the same errors. And when I say Spain, I mean the Spanish people and the banks. The banks offered them something they really wanted once people were back at buying properties. People were offered fixed rate mortgages for the time period of the whole mortgage when we were in a low interest rate economy. Not a 2-year fix or a 5-year fix, but a 20 or 25-year fix. You can look at our articles on the blog about getting a mortgage in Spain and suggesting, really, you should be getting a fixed mortgage rate. They're from 2 years ago, 1 year ago, 3 years ago. That advice might change at the moment. Over the last 6 or 7 years, almost everyone who bought a property and signed a mortgage got on a fixed rate of around 2% or under. That's right, 2% or under. And that rate is fixed until the mortgage is paid off. What people learned from the financial crisis was that variable rate mortgages were unreliable and your payments could go up massively with fluctuations in the interest rate every year. Of course, rates could go down too, but the current huge rises in interest rates are not affecting people in Spain as much as they are people in other countries. And that's, yes, the UK, I'm looking at you again. Equally, this also affects tenants as they're not lumped with huge rent increases when the mortgage rates rise. Also, they're protected by a limitation on the rent increases being what the inflation rate is. And the government last year put in place a 2-year moratorium on rent rises. They could only be at 2% in order to protect tenants from the huge inflation rate. Anyway, the inflation rate now is down in Spain to lower than 2%. So the government has said, okay, we're getting rid of that now. So it's a sort of virtuous circle here in Spain. It's unusual, but both buyers and banks learned a lesson and applied it. Amazing. It's amazing what you can do when you actually listen to what's happened in the past. In the next little bit of news, I answered Martin Lewis, the UK's money-saving expert, on Twitter and tagged a few people I know who live here, because the question he posed was whether you ever regretted moving abroad if you had done it. And the responses were devastating for the people who say, yeah, the UK is the best in every single way and you can't do anything better than that. People were responding with things such as, until I moved to Spain, I didn't realise I wasn't living in the UK, I was just existing. And it wasn't just Spain, it was everyone who'd gone anywhere. You know, people were responding from Poland, people were responding from the Netherlands, from France, they were responding from Italy, from Cyprus, from everywhere. Everyone who had gone and was answering this was saying the same thing, that in the UK, you no longer live, you just exist. The number of people who said never, not a single regret, was amazing. And my own answer was, when I walk down the street of my town, it doesn't feel as I'm visiting 1970s East Germany, which it does tend to do when I walk down the street of my hometown at the moment. It's just a mess. I've placed the question in the show notes and you can scroll through the answers, unless Elon has seriously shafted his site even more, because what is happening over in Twitter probably reflects what's happening on the high street in the UK. It's a total mess. So to get to the meat of this month's podcast, let's look at the state of the Valencia property market in summer 2023, and then we'll introduce you a little bit more to Stepping Stone Rentals before our full launch, which is in September. The current market in Valencia is still strong, although the local market has started to cool off a bit as prices have risen as have interest rates. And this has meant that people are starting to think twice before moving if they currently have a mortgage, because their mortgage rate will change and probably, well, definitely be considerably higher in any new property they buy. As explained earlier about the lack of a ticking time bomb, when you fix in Spain, you fix for the life of the mortgage, not 2 or 5 years. There are still some idiots with a variable rate mortgage, he said, looking at himself, who didn't bother to get a change to a fixed rate during the low interest years because that would have meant increasing the payment when interest rates were negative. But most new mortgages between 2014, 15 and today were at fixed interest rates as low as 1.5%. This has two effects though. People with those rates decide not to move. And two, fewer properties come onto the market if people aren't moving, so supply remains low. And because supply remains tight, prices are continuing to rise, or stay where they are due to the tight supply, and most properties are still selling at asking price or very close in the city. Outside the city, we've seen some movements in asking price, slightly lower, but agreed selling prices are tending to be very, very close to that asking price, or even at asking prices. The huge move at the moment, which we sort of missed over the last year and a half, was the purchase of ground floor apartments for commercial purposes in the city. And when I say ground floor apartments, I mean shops that remain as commercial premises and get converted into Airbnb. So what's happening? You can't live in them permanently. You can't get on the Padron register, but you can rent them out for up to 11 months of the year as an Airbnb. Whole areas have been converted into this type of accommodation at the moment, and it's not the areas like the main roads where the shops are, it's the back roads where no shops are going to open because there's no passing trade. So I actually see this as very useful for getting those Airbnb properties onto the market, because when you take a normal flat and you put it on Airbnb, you take something off the market for somebody to live in, and that's not good. If you want to know more about this incipient market, then contact us for more details. We've actually got a few for sale now, and the returns on them are pretty extraordinary compared with other things. The modernisation teams at many builders are currently backed up for 12 months or more with these projects, which shows you how many of them are getting done. And yes, eventually the goose will kill the golden egg or whatever it is, and it will not happen anymore. But at the moment it's happening massively, but only in the city. You can't do this outside the city at the moment. If you start doing this in small towns, again, this will be a huge thing for living at ground floor level. As regards Stepping Stone Rentals, we're now up and running, but we're an official launch date in September. We now have employees, properties we've photographed, and we're starting to upload onto what is now a functioning website, even though it will only be fully visible by the end of this week, maybe next week. Over the next 2 months, we'll be filling out the site more and developing the blog before launching officially in September. You'll be able to see the site at Stepping Stone Rentals soon, and when you can, we welcome your suggestions as to what features to add in, what we may have missed, and how you would improve the site. Bit by bit, we'll make it even better and more useful, both for people coming into Valencia and needing that initial stepping stone rental, and also for owners who want to put their property to use for people who are coming in for 3 months. The Facebook page is reserved, the Instagram's sorted, so that's also done. Elon can go and take a long walk off a short pier because we will not be getting a Twitter account for it. So that's it for this month, except to say, as usual, we have our recommendations for the month. Our article of the month, mentioned earlier, is how to ruin your Valencia property purchase, because we wouldn't want you to be that person. Our video of the month is James Blick again, and this month he went to the baby jumping ritual. Yes, you heard that right, the baby jumping ritual. Take a look. And our property of the month has to be the best description from June about this apartment fit for a czar in Rusafa. And yes, you heard again right, fit for a czar, not a star. Okay, all of those links are in the show notes. So until next time, thanks for downloading and listening. Contact us with your questions and to arrange viewings for you on information@valencia-property.com. And if you want to start your Valencia property journey, please don't be that guy. Most of us are off on holiday for a few weeks, but we're still working, and I'm going up to Asturias for a bit. So have a nice week, and hopefully we'll speak soon.